A very famous actor named Peter Falk seems to be using one eye and not the other. Why is that?
Peter Falk, a famous American actor who was famous from particularly the TV show Columbo, where he played the detective. He was born back in 1927, and he actually had a tumor, a malignant tumor of the eye, that was noted at the age of 3. It was called retinoblastoma. Retinoblastoma happens in about 1 in 15,000 births. And if it's not removed, the tumor can actually spread to other organ systems. It could spread into the eye, further into the eye, and actually into the brain. So it's a very common tumor in terms of malignant tumor of the eye, but it still only happens in 1 in 15,000 births. Well, anyhow, back when he was born, they noted the tumor, they removed his eye, and he's had a glass eye ever since. He's also been an advocate for certain groups to basically make you aware of retinoblastoma as being a dangerous disease that should be addressed. You might also remember Peter Falk as the grandfather in the movie The Princess Bride. And he was in a number of other movies, even in the 50s or 60s. I think he was in Guys and Dolls with Frank Sinatra. Marlon Brando was in that movie, and he's been a very popular actor for a number of years. And of course, that eye problem has never really discouraged him from going on to being a major actor.
Are there any other actors you can think of that have lost an eye for whatever reason?
Well, we were talking about retinoblastoma, and retinoblastoma is bad enough when it's a unilateral disease, because those are usually sporadic instances. But if it's a bilateral disease, it usually becomes a hereditary problem. And bilateral retinoblastoma usually means that there's a problem in your suppressor cells in your body's immune system, and this makes you more susceptible to cancers. There was a very famous Canadian-born blues rock guitarist who was popular in the 80s and 90s named Jeff Healey. And Jeff Healey was born with bilateral retinoblastoma that was noted at the age of 8 months. People who have retinoblastoma who's unilateral, it usually occurs later on in life. You usually find it at about the age of 2 and beyond. But people with bilateral retinoblastoma, which is hereditary, they're usually discovered before the age of 1. And when you have bilateral retinoblastoma, and particularly in those days, they had to enucleate both of his eyes. That means remove the eyes surgically to prevent the spread of the disease. Unfortunately, sometimes these people later on in life, they can develop secondary tumors and metastasis because of their problems with the suppressor cells. And Jeff Healey was one of those unfortunates. Jeff Healey, again, was born in 1966, but in sometime around 2007 to 2008, he developed sarcomas of the legs, which are neoplasms, and he also developed tumors of the lungs, which was probably related to his initial retinoblastoma history. He died at the age of 41 from complications of those diseases. But again, Jeff Healey, even though he had those problems, he recorded a very famous song called Angel Eyes in 1988. He was discovered by Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was a famous rock guitarist. He was also seen in the movie, if anybody remembers the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. He was the actual house band in the movie Roadhouse. And if you noticed him in the movie, you'll notice that he keeps his eyes kind of squinted closed because he has prostheses in. And again, did very well even though he had a major handicap.